just steps up your elegant grace. Beauty with brains puts the world in its place. They like the mic, that truth ignites, burning through the fake in the dead of night. Feminism shaking, red pill faking, they're breaking every chain the culture's making. No simps, no saints, no soft disguise. They see through the games and the alibis. They're not here to please, they're here to lead. Truth and balance, that's the creed. No one's a boom. Glenn and Gia, truth on fire. They're calling out the world's desire. From fake ideals to more decay, they're lighting up the modern age. No one's safe, not the church, not fame. They're flipping the script, rewriting the game. Love and logic, heart and soul, saving the truth for this nation's soul.
Yo, what's
What's up,
Gia?
everyone? We're back again.
How you living?
Oh, good.
How you doing, Gia?
I'm good. Been up since 4 a.m.
I
Down
know.
here.
Oh, I know.
I gotta get better with sleeping over here.
You know what? Gia messaged me like at 4 a.m, and I sent a message like, "Go to sleep. Go to sleep."
Yeah, my brain's always going.
Same here. Actually, I was just finishing up a couple edits. That's why I was like still awake. But so, anyways, you know what? We got a good one today. We
Yeah, we
got
do.
a good one. The modern man is facing a silent epidemic, and not one of diseases, but one of depletion. Testosterone levels are plummeting, strength is fading, and with it, the fire that once defined masculine drive. Men today are told to suppress their aggression, dull their edge, and soften their presence. Never that. But biology doesn't lie. When a man's hormones crash, so does his ambition, his confidence, and purpose.
And we're not even talking about vanity or ego. We are talking about health, vitality, and balance. This is a very, very important topic. The way a man feels, the way he thinks, the way he moves, the way he loves deeply is all tied into hormonal function. And it's a super important, but yet left out in today's media, right? It's not just a physical or superficial thing. It's a mental, emotional, and spiritual thing. And so this conversation really matters.
So joining us today is someone who understands this better than most, Dr. Pete. And he's going to help countless men, and he's going to help us. You know, he's help us men restore not just their testosterone levels, but their lives. So without further ado, how about we bring up Dr. Pete?
Dr. Patitsas.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Awesome to be here.
Thank you
Love
for
having you
joining us,
here.
sir.
Thank you for coming. So we are super happy that you are here. We're excited to deep dive into the truth about testosterone health, reclaiming the strength that every man deserves. And we're also going to be, in the end, getting into something that I think women need to hear, how important HRT is in a marriage and just for her to function. I think menopause is a touchy subject in relationships and often ends up ending the relationship. So we're going to get into that toward the end. So I invite everyone to stay through to the end. Let's dive in. Let's go.
All right. So, Dr. Pete, question number one. We're going to get right into this interview. All right. It's more like an interrogation. Okay. No, I'm kidding. Let's start from the top. In your own words, what role does testosterone play in a man's life beyond just muscles and libido?
Yeah, I mean, as an emergency medicine doc, I have patients of all shapes and sizes, ages, and there definitely is some type of as you mentioned, a deficiency in men more than ever these days. And the way that I would describe it is sort of that typical patient I have. I mean, I wish I wouldn't have to admit this publicly, but you get some 25-year-old male who comes in for what we call the man flu at 3 a.m. And all they need is 24 hours of Netflix and their mom's chicken soup, and they are distraught. And so,
wait a minute, Dr. P, we got to rewind that back a little bit. What is a man flu?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a term I've created. It's just sort of across the country as a pattern that we see, a trend. And really, what we refer to, it's this guy comes in, he's got a cold. He's got a cold.
The sniffles.
And essentially, and he needs just some Gatorade and a lot of rest and maybe watch some Netflix and call it a day, maybe a work note. But they come in distraught. They're not sure what's happening. I don't know if this is a result of the pandemic where everything becomes a disaster, but it is in young males. And I think that it's no coincidence that I think some statistics said that the average, I think it's even 30-year-old, has a lower testosterone than a man in his late 50s these days. So
what
what
I
is that all
understand,
about?
I heard like we've been dropping testosterone like for the last 3 generations. Like the last 3 generations, the testosterone levels have been less than the previous generation.
Yes. In fact, I
Right.
think it was after World War II, the average
Yeah.
testosterone level was something like 1,200. Now it's 700. And
Yeah.
and of course that's just an average. I mean, you have everything, as that bell curve above and below, but there is a trend downwards. And is it not interesting? It correlates with a society that is, plastic driven, materialistic driven,
I'm
secular,
gonna say like
feministic.
feminine.
Yeah, I mean, all these things that I think correlate with that territory. And anyway,
Mm.
in the emergency department, I see it as sort of the typical young man who really should just like be the strongest he'll ever be. He should be a pillar in his community. He should be taking care of everyone else in his family that is ill, or doing something to support them. And instead, he becomes a burden. And so anyway, a story, I don't know if it's worth even sharing, but I had one of these gentlemen come in during the COVID pandemic. He refused to leave the emergency department because he felt so unwell. Now, keep in mind, we'd done the testing to reassure him he was fine, imaging to reassure him he was fine. He refused to leave. And it was very interesting. I kind of did a little Jordan Peterson on him, which was like, sir, you have a duty to free up this bed for the next 50 people in the waiting room that we have to take care of. You need
With
to
real
go home.
problems.
You need to go home. And honestly, I mean, that sometimes is in, but it was so funny when I told this young man he had a duty, that specific word, his
Mm.
eyes just lit up, man. It was like speaking his language. And he left. He left and
It
he
was
didn't
like he
die.
needed that.
Yeah, he didn't come back. But I'm just saying, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting moment just to, connect with him
If
on that level.
if you could pinpoint maybe 2 or 3 things that really are behind this decline, like
Mhm.
lifestyle, diet, stress, what would you say it is really
Yeah.
causing this decline?
I think the most important thing, and again, then you'd have to ask why this is the case, but obesity is a huge problem. I think it's 75% of people are overweight, 40+% are obese. And, these are levels like if there's a level of morbid obesity that is just undescribable, where I have to transfer people from my emergency department to other centers where they have a CAT scanner that's big enough for them. I mean,
Wow.
I don't say this to insult them. I'm just saying it's that extreme. And so with that said, maybe most people don't realize this, but fat is a very hormone active tissue in your body,
Mhm.
and it will convert testosterone into estrogen.
It's testosterone, yep.
So it will lower
I've
your
been saying
testosterone and increase the estrogen in a male, and that's problematic. Yeah.
I've
Then they get
actually been
man
saying
boobs.
this for a
Yeah.
very long time to women, and they don't necessarily like when I say this, but if you get past that 28% mark, you
Mhm.
become estrogen dominant. And
Mm.
once you go, like, once your body switches to that, like that lever gets turned on, in order to get it back where it needs to be, where you're efficiently burning fat,
Yeah.
you have to suffer. You literally have to suffer. And women don't like that because they have to get out of their comfort zone, right? So like every single time I tell them, well, this is what we got to do. Well, that feels uncomfortable to me, is their favorite line. And I'm like, yes, but you got comfortable. And now you're at this point where comfort is no longer your friend.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
have to turn it back. We're going to have to suffer a little bit to get your levels back. But I've been saying this forever.
Yeah, well, I think the key is to suffer well and intentionally. And
Mhm.
if you're not doing that, I don't want to get biblical, but we only had 3 promises when we left the Garden of Eden. It was pain, it was work, and it was death. There was nothing else. It was literally, I mean, look it up. And if you're living a life where those 3 features aren't present, you're not living in gravity. You're not living in reality. And then how can you
Mhm.
adjust appropriately? And so by all means, I welcome a civilization where we can change the temperature and drive it conveniently and do all the things we want to do. But at some point, it begins to snowball into a problem. And like you said, whether that's hormone levels or our obesity or our functionality or our marriages, etc., there's a crisis among us, and it's interesting how it's measurable through something as simple as a testosterone level. But it is something we have to address, and it might just give us the chance, if we kind of hone in on that issue, to kind of give us a fresh start to do the work then, and to make everything else aligned.
Yeah, and see,
And
what a
men,
lot of men don't realize is how much like low testosterone actually impacts like their mood, their drive, their decision making. I
Yes.
mean, I tell guys, like, look, if you're feeling depressed, before you go to the doctor, get on some SSRIs, all right?
Right.
Go get
Right.
your hormone levels checked. Go
Right.
see what your testosterone is, because they will diagnose you with like a major depressive disorder
Mhm.
if you have low T. And you may not need all those SSRIs. You just may need to get your T levels up.
Yeah.
That has less effects than more than those pills that they be popping, does. Like, because all that does is mask them.
Well, and the SSRIs lower testosterone.
Yeah.
So
Makes it even worse.
Not only is it not does not address the true problem, it masks it, maybe even worsens it, and then really deregulates a person. Dysregulates a
Mhm.
person. It's just like it's almost like you're putting orange juice in your car or something, and you're expecting it to go forward. This is not going to work. And so, yeah, it is a problem. And psychiatrists, I will tell you personally, and again, there's some good people out there. It's a valuable specialty, but they have no training at all on hormone therapy. Zero. It does not make the medical school curriculum, and it certainly wouldn't make it in residency either. To offer that idea of checking a testosterone level is absolutely on point. And in fact, I again talk about a different population of people. I have certain regular comers to the ER. They've been to a new ER every 2 or 3 months with the same complaint, with the same workup, with the same reassurance. And I had this one guy, I finally said, you know what? I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to check his testosterone. You don't check testosterone in an ER.
I know. That'd be a weird thing to do, because
Yes.
it's like,
It is. But you know what? He had racked up so many bills, days of searching. I mean, it was an obsession, and his testosterone level was low. And I called him up with a positive result. I was like, sir, I just want you to know, like, everything is fine except this one thing. And I think you should have some supplement. And he was very grateful. I don't know if he ended up taking the advice, but he was hypogonadal essentially. And here he was spending tens of thousands of dollars, days of his life. It was his narrative. It was his life, was searching for an answer, and it was just back to his testosterone level.
So that's
That
a
makes
really
me-
good point, because you're right. Even if a doctor is trained in hormonal balance, even if he knows that area and can do it, even that, right? Even that does not qualify him to always handle every single case. And I say this because, for instance, I've in the past gone to different hormone doctors, and they had no clue they were putting me on all these things.
Yeah.
And then I finally, over the course of a year and a half, I found a female hormone doctor who specializes in competitors, bodybuilding, right? Which is what I do on a day-to-day basis. This is my lifestyle. And she has been able to pinpoint more than everybody else throughout the decades has ever done in a short amount of time. So what that tells me is if that doctor isn't actually living the lifestyle that you are, that's where I want to get into that, because you could be treating all these medications or on all these hormones, but if you're not treating the processed foods that you're eating, the sleep that you're getting, the exercise that you're inputting in, if you're not taking into account how all those messes with the levels, you'll never get it under control.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And, it's, again, you can suffer being well, or you can suffer being ill. And I would much rather have a challenging day where I feel healthy and tired at the end of that day versus feeling depressed all day and not putting in the work. And so you're absolutely right. You have to address everything, every aspect, the processed foods, the exercise, the activity level, how sedentary we are, which, of course, this is somewhat old news now, but not necessarily to the medical field, which, by the way, every medical discovery, they say it takes about 17 years to get it integrated into the standard of care. So even if we have the most brilliant insight into exercise, diet, and hormone therapy, it's going to take maybe 20 years before the doctors of the new age are kind of like, of course we check your T level. Of course we
before it
recommend
becomes like a regular process. Because I remember when I got mine levels checked, like it had to be a special panel request.
Mhm.
Like when they do the blood, the blood draw, I'm like, wait a minute, you're already drawing my blood. You just can't
add it on.
So yeah, it's crazy. It didn't make sense to me. But today, like men today are surrounded by things that work against them, right? Whether it's processed food, lack of sleep, chronic
Yeah.
stress, cultural conditioning, those things that discourage, masculine expression. I would even say soy, like, right? Like there's a lot of soy in our products that we use, like body wash, your skin being like the largest
Yes.
organ,
Yes.
that's why I recommend guys washing their body with tactical soap, soy boy free soap. But is it just like a little bit of like impact, or how much of an impact is it? That we should be looking at this.
Yeah, it's a huge impact. I mean, first and foremost, maybe the most depressing thing to emphasize is father time. I mean, even if you're doing the right diet, exercise, sleep schedule, etc., a male is losing 1 to 2% of his testosterone every year
Every
after
year.
30 on average. So then you throw in all that crap, which most Americans are, modern man, let's call it, is doing, and it's even lower. So by the time you're 40, ready for your midlife crisis, what is your crisis? It's probably low T. And it's because you're 80-70% of the man that you used to be, when you were in your peak. And so in my mind, it's like, just like we have screening for colonoscopies or different
I hate
swabs and
those.
whatnot. Probably every man should have his T level checked at the age of 40 and find out, oh my God, like I'm not where I used to be. And of course, with that said, we're not even starting at a baseline level of 1200 like our forefathers. We're hitting 30 at 700. So
I
now
know. Yeah.
we're working
You want to
down
hear
from that.
you want
Yeah.
to hear something funny? So I have spoken to men recently where their T levels were lower than me as a female. That's crazy. That is insane.
Yeah.
Well, Gia, the
So
people that troll you on Twitter, they don't count. Okay, like we already know their T levels are low.
so so for the men listening, like for them to be able to balance everything, careers, family, their home,
Yeah.
what is the first step? What would you recommend to them?
Well, I mean, let me say this, and this is how I pitch it to my men, patients, clients is, guys, I can get you back to the prime of your 20s with the wisdom, insight, and experience of where you are now in life. Like, what a powerful cocktail. Like, if it's like having the superpowers of wisdom, experience, and all those things, and now I give you this drive and this hormonal balance that you were kind of abused in your 20s without direction. So now we kind of I'm not giving them a superpower so they can go off and, buy a Beamer and get screwed up. I'm talking about like, so they can just hone in and nail in on what is most important with all that life experience. Now they have the drive and the supercharge to get it done. So in that regard, I think the first step really is the humility to recognize father time always wins. The next step is the awareness that your T level is at least not as good as it used to be. And thank God for 2025, we have options now. And so, a typical story is a guy shows up with, sleepiness, tiredness, malaise, depression, low libido, doesn't have drive, doesn't get satisfaction in old things. And suddenly he has his T level checked and he's below 400. And he thinks he thinks he's dissatisfied with his wife. He thinks he doesn't like his kids. He thinks he doesn't like his employer. You put him on testosterone and like, boom, they find themselves, and now they start excelling. Hey, making my wife happy is a mission. Sign me up. Making my kids sad, sign me up. Like, it's all like, let's get it done. And so now you can start introducing things like, improvements of sleep and whatever. But the point is that in some ways, just to get the conversation started, we got to get as fundamental as possible. And like, that's where we have to check the testosterone level. It's a big mover in our lives.
Yeah, you know what? This actually is the perfect time because I kind of came up with this solution too. This is like for other guys that might be struggling with it. I made a video for promo for a friend of ours and what they got going on, and I think you might agree. I think you might agree. I coined even the problem that they're dealing with. I'm not sure if it's like medically qualified yet to call it this yet, but help me. You might be able. I'll just say you made it up, and then you can take all the credit. Okay.
Okay.
Watch this. Hey, you. Yeah, you right there. Are you one of those guys who spend all day playing video games, crushing energy drinks, and then wondering why your joystick is the only thing that's getting any action? And do you cry during puppy commercials and like to blame it on your allergies? Yeah, I figured. Listen, What you might be suffering from is a very rare but modern condition known as masculine deficiency disorder. That's right, masculine deficiency disorder. Symptoms could include overanalyzing, oversharing, and a whole lot of underperforming. You know what I mean? Yes, you do. But don't worry, you don't need to schedule another therapy session with that guy that wears that cardigan and ask you how your inner child feels. And you don't need to take any more antidepressants that give you man boobs and emotional clarity. No, what you need is a Fauci-free vaccine. You know what I mean? Fauci-free. I'm talking no needles, no pills, just raw testosterone and righteous aggression. What's the solution? The solution is you going to the Full Spectrum Warriors Winter Summit this year. That's right, the Full Spectrum Warriors Winter Summit. Now, this ain't your typical 3-day man camp where you sit around singing Kumbaya while some bearded yoga instructor tells you to embrace your vulnerability. No, I'm talking about 3 days of hell-forged manhood. You'll be pushed to your limits, physically, mentally, and spiritually. You'll sweat, bleed, and you'll probably curse me out halfway through it as saying, why'd I even listen to Glenn? But you know what? By the end, you'll be walking out 10 pounds lighter, holding your head up 10 times higher, knowing that you're 10 times more dangerous too. We're talking about high intensity training, cold plunges, bonfires, gunpowder, steak, and a brotherhood of warriors who will actually watch your back, not those weak friends of yours who said they couldn't do it because their girlfriend said no. So if you're tired of therapy and you've read all the self-help books and you've journaled all your feelings and you still feel like your balls are missing, well, it's time to stop overthinking and start overcoming. Sign up for the Full Spectrum Warriors Winter Summit today. Come test your limits, reclaim your fire, and rediscover the man that God has always intended you to be. Because listen, the only cure to masculine deficiency disorder isn't hugs. No, what the cure is actually discipline, grit, and a whole lot of gun smoke. Hope to see you there.
Full Spectrum Warrior Protector Summit, winter 2026. Registration is now open.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, there is a movement and there is like an epidemic and a societal void that you're putting your finger right on. And to think that we can solve it, at least in terms of having a fair chance of solving it with medication that's pretty well studied and understood. And I also think this is a good time. Like we've had 100 years now of studying testosterone. Now, again, I can't vouch for all the various derivatives of testosterone, D-ball and whatever, but in terms of testosterone, cypionate, ethionate, those are well studied, well documented, well synthesized, a good market, and that's 95% of the battle. And talking about that,
crazy is it doesn't even it made it so easy now to get. Like before, it was a nightmare, but it's pretty relatively easy. Like mine gets shipped to my house. I don't gotta go nowhere, go give blood every 2 months, go get levels checked, and then I get the testosterone delivered with everything that I need in it. So it's not like you have to go around trying to buy it or figure it out. It's all there.
It is. It's mapped out, it's studied, and these drugs are safe, and people have been on them for decades. And then, of course, like it's almost consoling. I mean, when you find out a guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger is 70 whatever, and I don't even know all the things he's used, probably a lot, but he's doing okay. He had kids, in and out throughout his life, and not everyone dies with aneurysms and dissections, and a lot of that stuff is totally miscalculated dosing. I want to give this example. If everyone knows Tylenol, everyone knows Motrin, everyone knows iron supplements, you take any one of those three things at the wrong dose, you will have liver failure. Like I can give you like one of it, sadly, one of the most common techniques that actually it's usually teenage girls tries to overdose on is Tylenol. Well, it basically melts their liver. And so if you take testosterone at let's call it, I don't even know if I want to say bodybuilder doses, but 10, 20 times the dose, you're going to have a problem, just like you would have a problem with anything of 20 times the dose. But TRT,
I'm trying to figure out what's bodybuilder dosage because I'm like, okay, where am I at?
Well, I mean, I could speak to that. A typical dose, and this is in milligrams. I'm not talking about milliliters or a number of syringes, but I'll just say milligrams. A typical aggressive dose for TRT is about 160 milligrams a week. 160 milligrams a week. Some bodybuilders are on 5,000, 10,000 a week.
Oh, whoa, no,
So
I'm not,
That's a
I'm not
lot.
there.
well, and
I'm not
just
there.
saying though, is that, you know, in some ways you don't want to cook the turkey too quick. And so if
Yeah.
we just have a nice slow growth, and it's not about vanity, and it's not about some type of strange goal that doesn't match onto life, I mean, just optimizing and get you to the 95th percentile or 99th percentile of testosterone levels, which puts you at about 1500. When again, I told you that the average now is
Yeah.
700. But 1500, I'm sure during like freaking Greek times in ancient Greece was probably normal. Anyway, I just saying, but
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
that's funny you say that, because that's what
yeah,
like my the doctor that I work with, that was the mark that he said he wanted me to stay at. He's
yeah,
like, we want you to be at least 1500. All right, we want you to. That's perfect for you, like, for your age, your build. That's where we want you. That's our goal to keep you at. I'm like, cool. I'm good with it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, as a bell curve, what that basically puts you at is about 98th, 99th percentile. They have 100 men in a room. They say the people with the top 2 testosterone levels, please stand up. You're one of those guys. And
oh yes,
so, you know,
salute.
that's so I mean, that to me, that's physiologically competitive. That's not like super physiologic. And
Yeah, it's not
so
above average, or I'm not, it's above average, but it's not like superhuman status.
that's right. It's Olympic grade, and it's you.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I'm not wondering if the Olympians are going to die early. In fact, just the opposite. They're probably going to outlive us all. And so by all means, I think we've really we've really minimized the power of testosterone and what level there should be. I mean, again, 700 as an average is not really average. Like, you could just say on average Americans are just below average, you know, or below healthy.
yeah.
Let's just call it healthy. It's probably below healthy.
Well, because like I
700.
think 300 and below is considered low T.
It is, and a lot of the studies that determined why that was are just completely based on nothing. I mean, imagine these
Yeah.
nerds, these scientific nerds that are like sitting around. You were talking about this, Gia, right? You want your doctor being living proof of the knowledge, right? So you have these nerds sitting around like, oh, I think it's 300, and like they're the ones with their joysticks playing video games, and it's just like, no, man. Well, I don't know why you pick 300, but it doesn't match my life, and it's kind of arbitrary.
So if testosterone or balancing the hormones can optimize and get rid of depression, anxiety, all those things,
Yeah.
is it safe to say that it can also give a man purpose?
Yeah, I think what it can do is it can open your mind and your life so that you can find it all the easily, and you're not intimidated by the purpose that you're supposed to take on. So because so many middle-aged men have plenty of missions, plenty of purpose, but they don't have the drive to serve it. They don't have the
Yeah.
passion to serve it, and so they can't get productive doing it. And so I think that testosterone allows you to kind of be like, wait, things aren't so bad. I just have to do my duty. And now suddenly they can not just find their purpose, maybe finally just admit they have one, and see the value in that. That's a great question. I think it's almost like it just opens your eyes, and now you can say, yep, sign me up for that. I'm ready to go.
When I ask somebody what their purpose is, a lot of people don't even know what it means. They're like,
Mm.
what is a
Yeah.
purpose? Right. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it's a direction. It's your
Mhm.
direction. And so I
It's
think
your mission.
every individual has a purpose. Sometimes it's just simple as helping someone. And then once you understand that, it's not being lazy anymore to actually do it and
Yeah.
consistently do it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, if you follow kind of just the natural circles of life, I mean, most people have a spouse, they have children, they have extended family. You know, this, and again, I'm not trying to say things don't go wrong, but there is a grandma out there that needs your help. There is a grandfather out there that needs your help. You got aunts and uncles. Like, build your circle. And as you have more ambition and more drive, serve more people. And so that just as basic level is going to sign you up for the adventure of your lifetime. But everything after that is certainly possible. But yeah, I think we got to just simplify it. Like you said, it's like, wow, there's this thing called sleep and exercise and vitamins and eating good food, and that makes you live a long, healthy life. Like, you know, thank God the engineering of this world is fairly straightforward if we just were to do the basics. Yeah.
You know
we
what?
have- we
When you
have-
think about it, like, why do you think that, like, when it comes to male hormones, like we women have like no problem being on hormones. Like we tell them, like, women get on the pill. They say it helps them balance their hormones, right? But when it comes to like hormonal health for men, we've seen this entire generation of men being told that like strength and competition, or even ambition, having purpose, is even toxic. So
Yeah.
what part do you believe, like, when, because I heard this before, like, oh, you're on TRT. I mean, yeah, I'm 41. Like, what do you expect? Like, you know, like you're cheating. You're cheating. Am I cheating or am I just winning? You know, and you're losing. You know, like, but it's older women that will shame men for taking TRT. You're just trying to be like a young guy. Your time is up, and I'm like, so how much you think like the feminist cultural, you know, that influence is actually designed to negatively, you know, affect men like this?
What a losing perspective, right? Like, oh, shame on you for trying to be vital and hardworking and have drive still. Like, and you know, it's such a funny thing. I mean, let's imagine there was no such thing as TRT, but I told you about protein. If I tell you to get, you know, a gram per pound of protein a day, are you cheating or are you just eating optimally? You know, if I told you to intermittent fast, are you cheating? Like, at what point do you draw the line of manipulating the world around you so you can thrive as like as manipulation? It's just such a distorted way of looking at things. Is every time someone takes a medication to help with their heart failure cheating, or their insulin for their diabetes cheating? You know, it's such bullshit. And so I just think that, you know, by all means, we want to be autonomous and self-sufficient and able to kind of live the lives that we need without too much dependence. But at the same time, it's like, well, we live in 2025 and these are the medicines available and I'm doing everything else right and life gets better around me. I just, it's unfortunate that the narrative is like that, and it's all too familiar of a sound for what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I really want to dive into this next topic with women and HRT, because as I said, we do hear a lot about TRT, but we don't necessarily talk a lot about women and their hormones. And I understand why. Women are a lot more trickier. They kind of bounce all over the place during the month, right? So it's a little bit harder to pinpoint, because I know with myself, you kind of have to tweak as you go. Like the first initial dosing that they gave me, it had to be tweaked depending on how I reacted. And I think that has to be done constantly. And I want to get real practical for the listeners. Like if somebody comes to you and they says to you like, okay, I think I have low T, or I'm having libido issues or whatever. What's their first step? Do they go to a doctor? Do they have a consultation? Do they get a lab done? Like where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's certain hormone levels that ebb and flow through a woman's cycle. I mean, first thing I would say is recognize that two things you sort of synchronize and move 80% of our genes, and that's light exposure and when we eat. So the ultimate cycle in a woman is her menstrual cycle, but we live in 24-hour periods. So if you want to synchronize your 28-day cycle or 30-day cycle, get your 24-hour cycles in rhythm. In other words, sleep at the same time, eat at the same time. You need a routine. And so in that way, now we can sort of build up to your menstrual cycle, which is fine. So once we get regular by just this ceremony of routine, we can start reliably sort of saying, okay, where do I weigh in? And at that point in time, you can start saying, okay, on this day, I'm going to get my hormone levels checked, so I can always sort of see where I weigh in at that moment, because things do oscillate. The thing that's really important,
like monthly, like, okay, every second Tuesday of the month, I'm getting my hormones level checked to kind of keep track of it monthly, like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, basically, like during menses, by definition, their estrogen levels is as low as it will be. And then as they're ovulating and getting to mid-cycle, it's as high as it will be. So I would essentially say, hey, you might want two levels just to kind of see where things are. How low does it go and how high does it go? And then from there, kind of determine how you kind of weigh in for comparison after that. But the thing is this, women are kind of really alert and keen on estrogen and progesterone levels. Okay, that's very important. But testosterone is actually the dominant hormone in a female. I mean, by density, it literally is higher than their estrogen level, which is very interesting, because if you think about feedback cycles, if I put a woman on birth control and I'm giving her estrogen and progesterone and it's high enough to shut off their feedback cycle, they're shutting off estrogen and progesterone. They're also shutting off their own natural levels of testosterone. Yeah. Well, now they're just absolutely estrogen and progesterone dominant. What does that do to their life? And well, you could say it makes them hyper. I wouldn't even use the word feminine. It makes them imbalanced, and
makes them crazy.
Have a lot of moods.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like I know that I have to. I have to be very, very, like, even when I go get my blood taken, it has to be done on the same time of
Sure.
every month, right? It's the same thing. Like, I'm very into routine basis. Like, I,
Yes.
have to work out at the same time. I have my meals, I have my vitamins.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost it is a full-time job.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's your body, it's the temple of your soul, it's your life, and obviously it's working great for you. I think what's important though, it's so funny. I like to say this all the time. A female's average testosterone level is 70. A man's is 700. A silverback gorilla 7,000. So anyway,
Silverback gorilla status. I'm trying to just get there.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying though is that it's so interesting how strength correlates with it, among other things. But women need testosterone. In fact, I heard actually more optimal levels probably maybe 100 for a female. But the point is that they do need testosterone, and it's actually a part of the cocktail of hormone therapy now. Progesterone, estrogen, you need testosterone. Again, for female, it's a lot lower dose. It's kind of cute, actually, how small it is that they have to inject. But the point is it's important. Yes.
I talk about what keeps relationships together a lot. Like, most of my conversations are around those topics. And I think that this falls into line more than people want to admit.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, what makes a man, like, people want to say that love keeps a relationship together, but it's actually appreciation and compatibility that keeps a relationship together. And with that being said, like, appreciation. So how does a man feel appreciated? He feels appreciated when a woman initiates sex with him constantly. He should not always be the driver. And if her libido is low, obviously he's going to feel a lack of appreciation if she's never initiating sex. So when I talk to especially women in their 40s and 50s, and they start telling me about how menopause basically ruined their marriage and they got a divorce after that point came, it started to make me really see how much this affects marriages and relationships. Do you think that there's a lot of truth to that? Do you think that because they're getting into menopause and they're not initiating sex, they're not having any drive whatsoever, that the husband doesn't feel appreciated and it breaks down the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a dignified way that people can manage themselves no matter what's going on inside their bodies. But with that said, absolutely, there's even studies that show that brain activity in menopausal women is actually reduced from the lack of estrogen and progesterone that's secreted. And so, yes, by all means, I mean, it can put tremendous strain on that person, and that person can project, and that person can, really be difficult to be around and to enjoy and to appreciate. And they themselves aren't happy either. They don't even know what to do about it. And it's unfortunate, I guess, up until about the year 2000, it was very standard to put women on estrogen and progesterone to help them with menopause symptoms and perimenopause and menopause. But then, of course, that study came out, which showed that there was a 25% increase in breast cancer risk from taking estrogen and progesterone. Completely a manipulative study. 1,000 people were a part of this study. 4 women would have got breast cancer anyways. There was one additional one that got breast cancer. We're talking 994 people that had a phenomenal experience, had all the benefits at the expense of one person. Now, again, this is for the ethics people to discuss what's worth it. But in my opinion, if you could save all those marriages and all those people, sometimes there is a cost to big boy decisions. Like, I'm sorry, there's just not going to be a perfect solution, and it might just be worthwhile. Well, it's making a comeback, and we know also too that if you don't ingest orally a lot of these estrogen and progesterone tablets, it's not as toxic to the liver and to the system in general. And so you can even reduce the risk of many of these side effects even more if it's injectable or if it's a gel or a patch, for example, just to get practical.
I'm glad you brought that up. So I personally like injectable testosterone. Why is it that most hormone doctors put women on tablets when, in my opinion, they don't work?
Yeah, I think it's completely commercialization, like convenience of use, and people not caring. Some of these companies not really caring about the side effects. So they're like, oh, if it's going to be an injectable, it's going to be millions of women. No one wants to prick themselves. No one wants the pain, the discomfort, whatever. Let's make it a tablet. Well, you suffer for that. Now, there are gels and like I said, patches, but I think it's completely built by pharmaceutical companies that just don't care.
It kind of keeps them on
when it comes to the gels, right? Like, I seen you got to put them in some awkward places. Like,
yeah. Well, actually, And the absorbability of those gels is very is huge range depending on how much fat there is, the type of skin they have, what moves, how much they sweat. Like sometimes they don't absorb as much as the next person, so you can get very irregular.
You don't even get
absorb-
like a consistent level of
Yeah.
like absorption.
Yes, it's very difficult to standardize, even with the gels and the patches for that matter. Really, I think to have optimal, you probably should be injecting all of this hormone therapy. Really,
So if you were speaking to a woman who said something like, my history, there's cancer in my family, right? It runs
Yeah.
in my family. So I'm afraid of taking testosterone because I don't want anything to happen because there's a history of it. What would you say to her?
I would just say it's not statistically significant. I mean, everyone's got to make a big decision as to there's genetic testing now, there's screening, there's mammograms. The resolution of these mammograms is even more extraordinary. I think there's just other ways to keep monitoring so that you can still get the benefits and have that safety net. Again, this is wonderful territory to enjoy in the modern day, but like I said, it's statistically minimal risk, and then there's so many phenomenal screening techniques that can give you insight if there's a problem. But everyone's got to own it. Like, I just feel like another thing too we struggle with in society, it's like, just be accountable for your damn decision. If you don't want to have kids, own that. If you want to have 10 of them, own it. Just don't look depressed. Like, whatever it is, I want you to be thriving and non-apologetic. And I'm not saying they're doing the right or wrong thing, but just be accountable to your own decisions.
Stop blaming it on everybody else, right? It's like
The victim mentality is, I've had enough with it. I really have.
Do you think like we could is there a hormone? Is that what it is? Like, is this the unbalance of hormones? We got a bunch of bitchiness and like unaccountabilityness. Is that what it is? Do we need to level up their testosterone?
I mean, again, if you think about it, there are millions of women out there that are on birth control at a young age who are not supplementing with testosterone. And so, yes, I mean, we have created a society of people that are very out of balance. And then, men come with it. And we're all wondering why we're saying a lot of stuff that just, it's not that we don't need all these other hormones. We just need a balance of them. And so even men need estrogen, it's just that we don't want low testosterone with it. And so, it's a wonderful era to take advantage of these things if you're so motivated. But unfortunately, sometimes we got to incorporate this into society better, because not everyone's as motivated to research these things, to know. And it's great that these studies, this literature is out there now. It's time to do something about it.
Quick question: when it comes to, go ahead, Gia. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because like from a pattern standpoint, we know that men's midlife crisis that has something to do with hormonal imbalance, right?
Yeah.
And then we can say, well, women's midlife crisis tends to also have to do with this hormonal balance and their stuff.
Yes.
From a medical standpoint, then why doesn't the psychological field connect with the biological medical field here and be like, hey, you know what, when you are having a couple come in having problems here and they hit about this age, why is it not like a collaboration and be like, hey, how about you both you need to go get your hormone levels checked? Maybe that adjusting that could solve or help them minimize like the problem that it's really they're dealing with, rather than making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you think about the things we do for colonoscopies and screening for different cancers, mammograms, when you get your vaccines at certain ages, just standard timetable. Hey, you hit 40, you're a male, get your testosterone checked. Hey, the average woman goes through perimenopause by 52. At 45, we want to see what her estrogen's like. Whatever it is, we definitely have the data now to make an informed protocol. And it's just going to take, movers and shakers in the field to finally say, you know what, this is something we should do. But thank God, there's a group of people that are kind of ahead of the ball or ahead of the game. But I totally agree. It should be something just like we talk about sleep or vitamins or, our activity level. Hey, what's your hormones look like? And there's medicine to take care of it. What a wonderful thing.
I honestly believe that the reason why they'll first get you on prescriptive medications, like for anxiety, for depression, is because it keeps you on a hamster wheel. And I think that this is the same thing when we deal with cancer. and how they handle that in the hospitals. Our American healthcare right now is all about getting you stuck on a hamster wheel. It's not about really getting you out of it, because then they wouldn't have a lifetime patient.
I mean, I agree. This is the reality. 90% of all disease is preventable. 90%, all through basic stuff. Thank God we have an engineered Earth world, rules of the game, where it's that basic for a good, healthy, long life. I mean, what a blessing. At the same time, you have commercialization of everything that is resulting now in hyperpalatable foods, medications you have to be on forever, stuff that kind of works but solves the wrong problems, masks the problem. But I will say this, and again, this is me as an ER doc. As much as I will criticize the meds, I like to tell people this: you can't criticize the meds until you don't need them anymore. In other words, you want to do the exercise, you want to get your sleep dialed in, you want to get your eating habits dialed in, and now we can start criticizing Lipitor, all that stuff, statins. I don't like any of those drugs. I'm just saying is you can't be pontificating about how you hate pharmacies when you're literally 450 pounds at the age of 55 and 5 feet tall and hating insulin. Like, I'm sorry, but if you do the right things, let's have a great discussion about saying, hey, you know what? This stuff is really manipulatable. It keeps you on a rat race, and let's do something about it. But you got to put the work in, kind of going back full circle. We have to put the work in.
I say the same thing to when I train in the gym. All these people want to try all these new exercises they've seen on TikTok. And I'm like, no, if you have not learned the basics, the foundational exercises, then why are we moving to the rest? So exact same concept.
Yeah.
Well, everybody wants to do the hip thrust because they see it in the videos. They want to do the,
yeah, it is funny, actually. And I will say, I think that also what happens, it's almost like a very complex psychology where it's like, I want to do these extra special things. And since I can't do them perfectly, I won't do anything. It's very strange. It's almost like they set themselves up for perfection, so they have the excuse to exit the game, and then they just stay at zero, and they never make progress. I'd rather have an imperfect workout that has the basics that I do all the time than like theoretically this cool obscure something that like I can't do, and so then I just exit the game and I never make any progress.
And the basics are always the ones that last forever. I mean, that's foundational. If you can't do the foundational things.
Yes.
So I worked in a doctor's office for over a decade, and I was able to see the trends. Like you know how that is, right? Pharmaceutical reps come in, and there's always like the new medication. They need to push that, and then the doctors get a kickback from that, and so on. So I would really get into the trends, because from what I'm noticing, even in the hormone doctor lane, even in that lane, I'm noticing peptides have become sort of a trend lately. So I want to touch on that. Do you think that if you are balancing your hormones, let's say you're on the right dosage of testosterone, you have your progesterone, you have everything balanced, do you think peptides is something that's a good thing to start, or do you think it's more of a trend?
I mean, I'll just say this. If you have your sleep dialed in, your exercise, your vitamins, your food, and we can add on TRT on top of that. I'm not trying to say there isn't more gains to be had, but I mean, you are going to be a beautiful, healthy, hardworking, ambitious person. And I just don't, it's not to say peptides don't work. They absolutely do. But like for me, given my risk tolerance, I like to have 100 years of research on medications that are just going to work over millions of people. And like, I'm already winning the war. Now, for people with different joint pains, etc., I really do think peptides are very effective. I just don't know what the long-term effects of that are. Now, with that said, if you're looking for some growth hormone, you can do that through intermittent fasting, extended fasts. There's different ways to naturally do that. And there are synthesized versions of things that release that. But yeah, for where I am in my personal professional development, I already see a very successful, victorious person with all the things we have already. As to adding on peptides, to me, I'm not quite understanding the space yet, although I recognize it as a frontier that's very valuable to explore.
So I'm with you on that. I agree. There was one other thing I want to touch on before I forget. Do you notice a trend with everybody now being put on cholesterol meds? And the reason why I say this is because I'm noticing this. I'm very good at connecting the dots, and I'm seeing this even with very healthy female and male clients, right? They're great. They eat great. They exercise great. But all of a sudden, they got high cholesterol. But then when you look at their T levels, that's also elevated. And I try to tell them, no, you really just need to incorporate some omegas. You need to reduce your carbohydrate intake. You need to come down off the processed sugars,
Yeah,
and you can naturally elevate your cholesterol. But immediately the doctors want to put them on cholesterol. So I want to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I totally really don't like statins at all. But again, if you're a motivated person, everyone's got 3 months to put their life in order. Unless you're like 70, you're on death's door. But for the average American, let's say from 10 years old to 55, you got 3 months to reduce your risk factors, to put your life in order, to then say, hey, did I do it or not? And if at the end of that 3 months you haven't taken the responsible steps, okay, you probably have to be put on a statin. But by all means, if you don't want to be on a statin and you want to do the work and you want to do the common sense stuff, you're going to be fine. I would far trust a healthy person at a healthy weight with a good lifestyle, doing all the right things over a particular lab value any day of the week. So if your life is in order, it's just a number to me. But at the same time, if there's things that you can change and optimize, by all means do that. And if you find yourself, not doing the work after the 3-month experiment, with some humility, I guess you need some medication, but try again, and yeah.
Have you heard of Plaquex therapy?
I have not. What does that include?
So it's a natural, it's pretty much a natural supplement that lowers cholesterol naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find different formulas over the counter, but I know that the more potent one you'd have to get from a doctor. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that to see if you knew what it is. I'll send you some information on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, again, there's so many different ways to lower your cholesterol. Sometimes they're through absorbing fats that keep you from actually digesting it. There's side effects from that. Other things have you excrete it or not make it. There's different things. But, the point though is again, if you dial in on the diet, a lot of these things take care of themselves. And exercise ultimately can really neutralize a lot of bad food that you eat at least.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I wanted to bring up your book, the Athos Diet, right? You talk about that. You mentioned how a lot of the vast metabolic diseases across the developing world are indicated through severe widespread problems because of hormones, metabolic hormones, issues with insulin, all these things. So you approach it from a 3-pillar standpoint, from what I understand. You address it from intermittent fasting, having a high protein, but you're focusing on plant-based diet or plant-based protein, which is interesting. I have a question about that. And then you talk about being active and walking. So can you kind of discuss, because you talk about diet, you just mentioned diet a minute ago. Yeah. How do you approach diet in your book?
In that framework? Well, what I said, I think the biggest mover of those 3 pillars is the intermittent fasting part. And basically what the book states is that there are these monks in the peninsula of Greece that have been living in this magical world. I mean, honestly, it's like Narnia, Lord of the Rings, where they've been outliving societies for 1,200 years, and they don't have statins, they don't have elliptical machines, but what they do is they can find when they eat at particular times of the day, and some of them only eat 1 meal a day, and a lot of them actually are to some extent vegan to kind of pescatarian throughout the year. And so what we do is we just try to mimic those aspects of what they do. So what I tell people is you don't eat for 16 hours a day. Actually, for some people, I recommend 20, no eating for 20 hours a day. So you're essentially eating over 4 to 8 hours. So that's the intermittent fasting part. And that's very important because even if you didn't have the discipline to change anything more about your diet, you will live 40% longer, which is a pretty incredible game changer.
So is that eating all your calories in one sitting?
Eating all your calories within that eating window, 4 to 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours a day.
Okay.
And with that said, though, the science, sort of highlights this or echoes this, that light and when we eat are just as important as well. They are the most important drivers of 80% of our genes being in synchrony. And that's pretty powerful. So if you want to get your life in order, eat the same time of day every day. And you can't eat like the average American, which is 11 times over 15 hours. I mean, that's like that's like wanting to drive your car 60 miles and every mile and a half stopping and then wondering why your car's inefficient. So
I don't do that. I'm nowhere near that. I'm more maybe once or twice a day, but I split up my calories in between,
Yeah.
I
But
have tried different things, but what works for me is high input and also high energy. Like I take a lot of meals like every 3 hours, but they're very
Mhm.
portioned. And then I go to the gym and I put out a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So this is what's worked for me. But I have tried intermittent fasting. It just doesn't do well. And I'm curious, is there something that does better with men in intermittent fasting than
oh
women,
yeah,
like
that's a
with
good
their
idea.
hormones?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, I'll say this: women are a lot more sensitive to cortisol levels, which tend to be higher in the mornings. So, if a woman was to do the intermittent fasting thing, I would actually say your window should be front loaded. So every day in that
Oh,
24-hour cycle, you should probably be eating within an hour of waking up. And then 8 hours later, which if you think about it, you wake up at, well, I guess you were up at 4 a.m, Gia, but let's say you're like a normal human being that wakes up at 7. By 8 o'clock, you're eating, and by 4 o'clock, you stop eating.
I
It
got you.
doesn't sound
and
too like
it's
terrible.
not hard if you look at it that way. You go, okay,
Yeah.
here's your window. You can eat as many times you want a day
Yes.
up to this window, as long as you're only consuming the calories that you need in your macros that you need to
That's right.
consume during that window.
That's
After
right.
that, you can stop, and then it's really not that bad.
It really isn't. And like I said, you take any mammalian species and do that, and it'll live 40% longer. Now, are there other ways to achieve that longevity benefit? I'm sure there are, but this
What
is
about
so
regulating
simple.
what about regulating the insulin levels? Like, what about that? What about keeping everything kind of steady? Doesn't that help with like cravings and
Well, this is the thing, which is so interesting. It's sort of two parts to this. One is that if you get enough protein in that 8-hour window, then your satiety is hit, and you actually, it's like when a person's not allowed to drink water but they're thirsty, they start snacking on stuff. Well, they're not hungry, they're thirsty. I would say the same thing about really a lot of our food items that we eat. We're really just hungry for protein. We're
Thirsty.
just not giving
Yeah.
giving us stuff enough. So there's that element. But then actually, intermittent fasting improves insulin sensitivity. It actually improves insulin resistance, and the reason for that is your pancreas just gets a break. I mean, if you imagine, all of these organs just get turned on every time that you simulate some food going into your mouth. And when you kind of get a little bit more disciplined about it, it's like, okay, this is the digestion period, this is the absorption period, this is, there's 30 feet of intestine to kind of innervate and synchronize as you're digesting. That's a pretty impressive feat. In fact, the enteric nervous system has 100 million neurons, and there's 100 trillion bacteria in your gut. So, like,
Hey.
there's more cells of bacteria in your intestine than there are cells in your body. Who's living for who? But the point is, I'm bringing up is, if we can kind of better synchronize when we eat, and and of course then the macros after that, you can get a lot of stuff in your life in order. And it's always interesting to me that when people try to, after a breakup or they have some mourning or tragedy in their life, when they eat and how they kind of navigate their food cycles change a lot. A lot of widows and widowers, they go through fasting periods. Why do they do that? It's kind of like it really calls into question what is our core. But anyway, the point is that if you
I see what you're saying, like psychologically, like why they end up naturally just
well,
going to the fasting
they do
sense.
say starve the cold. So there is some right. There's some truth to starving. So like when you do stop feeding yourself food, your body has to work off of its system. Because my brother's big on that. Like if he's got a cold, he starves. He goes fast. He fasts, and it goes away.
Even your dog will not eat when it's sick. It just knows. And in fact, this is so well documented. I mean, this deserves a whole another discussion. And this is an area of emphasis I love. But the point is that your enteric nervous system that lines your gut is one of the biggest nervous systems in your body. It even questions as to what our core is. So that when we talk about this visceral experience of fasting or of monitoring your diet or changing it in any way, you're really pressing on some of the most deep parts of yourself. So that if I can change when I eat, what I eat, how I eat, you're really changing who you are. And you heard that old phrase, go with your gut. We're talking about that's nervous system talking. That's not bloating. That's your body telling you something about a girl, about a situation, about what you should do with your life. And so with that said, it's one of the most metabolically active systems in the body. Like 10 to 20% of our calories are just used for digestion. And what's interesting to me is when people go on prolonged fast, their metabolism increases. So what are they doing? What they're doing is they're releasing things like sirtuins and anti-inflammatory factors, and they're healing themselves. So it's actually very interesting that I would like to argue 90% of all disease is preventable, and one of maybe the biggest factors in sidestepping a lot of that tragedy is through something as simple as fasting. And in this course of the out.This diet, essentially it's reducing your eating window to no more than 8 hours. It's trying to get as much protein as you can. And I'm the biggest carnivore in the world, but I also believe in sort of dynamic seasonal changes. You know, we weren't meant to just kind of only have one season, I guess, unless you're in Ethiopia or something. But you know, there's 4 seasons, there's weekends, there's holidays, there's things that kind of change up that routine a little bit. And so what I say is every once in a while, go plant-based. And this is not for hyper athletic Olympic stars. This is for the masses. This is for like everyone that's from 0 to 85 to get healthy.
Yeah, I thought you were about to tell me I got to give up my filet mignons and my chicken breast.
No.
I was about to get real like depressed here.
No, not at all. Not at all. Just get protein from a good source. But I do think that changing it up with a little bit of dynamic, sort of intentional routine can make a big difference.
What would you recommend as like a good protein, like a plant-based protein?
Well, it's funny actually. So you know when you talk about like protein to calories, you know, eggs I think are like 1 gram of protein for maybe 12 calories. Well, you can do 1 calorie to about 7 or 8, 1 gram of protein for 7 or 8 calories for hemp. And what I mean by that is not that a protein gram isn't 4 calories. It's just to say that all the stuff that comes with it, you know, what really annoys me about plant-based protein bars is like you're eating 10 grams of protein, but it's like 300 calories. What am I going to do that for being lean? But there are ways like hemp protein, pea protein, actually in the diet, shrimp's allowed, which of course is not a plant, but that's sort of
I mean, they're a bottom feeder. They might as well consider a plant.
It's a Christian-based diet, and if you look back into the ancient churches we were talking about, sort of you know, era first 100 years, this bottom feeder stuff was actually allowed to eat all year long, which is interesting. You know, they didn't have the science then, but it actually turns out to be kind of healthy. Lots of protein there, lots of fat, by the way, too, and I don't mind the cholesterol that comes with it.
The healthy fats, like the good fats and stuff.
Yeah. And again, if you have everything else in order, I'm just not too intimidated by cholesterol. I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
So in this book here, for you guys that are interested, you guys can get it on Amazon. All right. All you gotta do is look up the out.This diet. Before there were Atkins, there was out.This.
Right.
So is that where you break down tell us how like the book is structured before we wrap up?
Yeah, essentially, I just try to make the idea that we live in a world of convenience and we're like polar bears in the desert. Like in our effort to try to free the polar bear from the freezing cold, you put the damn thing in the desert, it's going to die. And what I'm trying to tell people is as we have enjoyed these different levels of civilization, like we still have to be sober, raw, ambitious, hardworking. And the way you can do that is through diet. It's through exercise. It's kind of through like we call it asceticism, but it's like suffering intentionally well. Like you're trying to introduce difficulty in your life even though you don't have to do it.
Embrace the suck.
Sorry, Glenn.
Embrace the suck.
Exactly. And you need to do that so that when you're in my emergency room, in the waiting room, you're not like most of the people that won't let the toddler dying from pneumonia go ahead of you because you arrived earlier. Like I can't tell you how much human nature really shows itself in moments of tragedy. If you can limit your diet, if you can exercise, if you can embrace the suck, you can let a toddler go ahead of you in the waiting room to get emergency care. And it's very unfortunate that I've been in situations where people are unmasked and you see the vices emerge in the most delicate, extreme situations, and it's really ugly. But if we can introduce this difficulty in our lives when the actual tragedy hits, we won't be adding to it. And so the book itself is kind of it's philosophical, it's you know, a little esoteric, but it also is very functional and very helpful and very productive. So it's pragmatic. Three pillars. It's all in that book. It's very helpful, and there's people living that way for 1,200 years, and they live to their 90s. You know, without Parkinson's, without diabetes, without amputations of their feet, without obesity. I think it's the 101 of nutrition, and then we can layer up all sorts of stuff on top of that. So
amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This has been extremely informative.
Yeah, thanks,
session.
Leah. Thanks, Glenn. That was really nice. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's been a great conversation. I'm glad that we kind of recap it real quick. So, fellas, get on TRT. Ladies, get on TRT so you can stop hating each other when you guys are in your midlife crises. It might save your marriage. All right. All right. Go to the doc if you need the spot. And gentlemen, if you are got the sniffles and this man flu,
Yeah.
just get on TRT.
We'll link all your resources down below as well, guys.
Yes. You know, so thank you, Doc Pete, for joining us.
Thanks, Gia.
I'm glad I got your book.
Thank you.
Until next time, you guys, love, peace, and greasy chicken.
They walks in with that dominant presence. Voice cuts deep like a summer with essence. Just steps up your elegant grace. Beauty with brains puts the world in its place. They like the mic, that truth ignites. Burning through the fake in the dead of night. Feminism shaking, red pill faking. They're breaking every chain the culture's making. No simps, no saints, no soft disguise. They see through